When a disaster of unimaginable scale hits, what tools do we even have to fight back? In this explainer, we're going to look at how technology, everything from the simplest app on your phone to the most advanced robotics, became this critical and sometimes really complicated force in one of this century's worst natural disasters. Let's get into how it all unfolded. So, back in February 2023, a truly catastrophic series of earthquakes rocked Turkey and Syria, and the human cost, it's just staggering to even think about. The death toll climbed past 50,000 people. More than 100,000 were injured. I mean, it left a scar across a massive region. The UN Secretary General didn't pull any punches. He called it an epic natural disaster. And the World Health Organization? They said it was the worst disaster to hit its European region in a whole century. That gives you a sense of the impossible challenge that rescuers were facing on the ground. Okay, so in the middle of all that chaos, as buildings and roads crumbled, another kind of infrastructure was being put to the ultimate test, our digital and technological tools. So let's take a look at what was actually used on the front lines, right there in the rubble. I want you to just imagine this for a second. It's the most raw human example possible. You're trapped, it's dark, and all you have is your phone. For so many people, a single tweet, a post with their location, was their only beacon of hope. It was a desperate call for help broadcast right from under the debris. Yes, social media platforms basically turned into these huge, chaotic, but vital coordination centers. They played so many roles. It wasn't just about one person calling for help. We're talking about organizing armies of volunteers, sharing critical info on where aid was needed most, and even having teams verify locations using live stream data to guide rescuers in real time. It was incredible. But what happens when you don't have a signal? You can't call, you can't text, and you can't shout for days on end. You'd be exhausted. The solution was actually brilliantly simple: high-pitched whistle apps. They don't need any reception, and they let people create this loud, piercing signal to get the attention of rescuers, all while saving their precious energy. One of these apps was downloaded over 5 million times. Now, on the complete other end of the spectrum, it wasn't just simple apps. We also saw tech that felt like it was straight out of a sci-fi movie. This is NASA's Finder. It's a portable microwave radar system that was flown right into the disaster zone. It doesn't listen for sound. It looks for the tiniest movements of a human heartbeat and breathing. And it's so sensitive, it can tell the difference between a person, a machine, or even an animal. You know, the response wasn't just from big organizations like NASA. Thousands of volunteers jumped in, collaborating on open-source websites to build tools specifically for this crisis. They were creating heat maps to show where calls for help were clustered, building databases of blood donors, and even using AI to sort through all the noise on social media to find the most urgent cases. It was a massive decentralized effort. Okay, so from the ground, let's zoom all the way out to space. An AI model called XView2 was used to analyze satellite images to figure out how bad the building damage was. It could create a map of the devastation in minutes, something that would take humans days to do. But it wasn't perfect. The AI needed clear daylight, and it couldn't see damage on the sides of buildings. It just goes to show that even our most advanced tools have blind spots. But here is where the story gets a lot more complicated. Because these powerful technologies, they're often double-edged swords. For every single way a tool was used to save a life, there was another way it could be exploited. It was a constant battle between promise and peril. And this contrast is just so stark with social media. While people were using it to pinpoint victims and organize aid, scammers were using the exact same platforms to spread misinformation, circulate images from totally different disasters, and even set up fake charities with fraudulent links to try and profit from the tragedy. The generosity, though, it was global and it was digital. The crypto community responded really fast. Various firms pledged over $10 million in digital assets to support the relief efforts. It was this massive, almost instantaneous fundraising campaign. But this is where the promise of crypto just collided with the harsh reality on the ground. The idea of fast, borderless donations is powerful, for sure. But actually converting those crypto assets into Turkish lira that could be spent right away, that turned out to be a really slow and difficult process. There were even reports of funds getting stuck on exchanges. It really highlighted the gap between a digital promise and practical, real-world help in a crisis. So all the tech we've talked about so far was used right in the heat of the moment. But this disaster, it forces us to ask a really important question. What's next? What technologies are just over the horizon that could completely change how we respond to the next crisis? You know, virtual and augmented reality aren't just for video games anymore. They are becoming these incredibly powerful training tools. Just imagine being able to train first responders by putting them inside a virtual collapsed building, letting them practice rescue strategies and teamwork long before a real disaster ever strikes. And the logic behind it is actually pretty simple but really powerful. First, you create a simulation of the disaster, all the chaos, but in a safe, controlled space. Then you let teams practice in it over and over again. And finally, you analyze all the data from those practice runs to build smarter, faster, and way more effective plans for the real world. Then you have the Internet of Things, or IoT. This could give us a real-time, minute-by-minute picture of a disaster's impact. Imagine buildings with sensors embedded in them that instantly report structural damage. Or aid convoys with trackers that allow for perfect logistics, making sure supplies get exactly where they need to go with zero delay. And remember that problem with accountability for all the aid money? Well, blockchain, the tech behind crypto, could offer a solution. By creating a transparent, unchangeable digital ledger, you could track every single donation from the person who gave it all the way to the person who receives it. It's a powerful way to fight corruption and make sure aid is actually used effectively. And there's even more coming. We're talking about AI-powered chatbots that could handle the flood of questions from millions of affected people, freeing up human responders to do other work. And of course, rescue robots. Drones, ground vehicles, even snake-like bots that are designed to go into collapsed buildings that are just way too dangerous for any human team. So we've seen these incredible tools, right? The ones we're using today and the ones that are coming soon. But when you just step back and look at the whole picture, what's the single most important lesson here? What's the core takeaway from all this? And it all boils down to this. Technology is not a magic wand. It's pretty clear that having NASA's Finder or some sophisticated AI is completely useless if it's just sitting on a shelf somewhere. These are tools, and just like any tool, they need investment, they need training, and they need practice before you're in the middle of a crisis. Preparedness is absolutely everything. And so, that leaves us with this final, crucial question. We've seen the incredible potential of this technology to save lives. The innovation is there, no doubt about it. But do we, as a global community, have the will to actually prepare? The will to invest, to train, and to make sure that when the next disaster inevitably strikes, we are truly ready?